Extraordinary circumstances have required all of us to change so much this year. You have adapted. You have persevered.
Naval Postgraduate School President and former Vice Admiral Anne Rondeau has overcome many professional challenges during her distinguished military and academic careers. Learning how to lead from the front of predominantly male-oriented institutions before gender equality became the order of the day is a textbook example of how good leadership skills can overcome most professional and personal obstacles, whatever the institution or culture. As part of the Marines Memorial Association's tradition of honoring commitment and sharing timeless leadership lessons learned in all walks of life, the conversation continues in this online extension of what normally takes place at the Marines Memorial Club, a public, nonprofit hotel, theater, restaurant, and event space in downtown San Francisco, serving generations past and generations to come for nearly 75 years and counting. I'm Correspondent Mike Cerre, and this is Leading from the Front. The personal opinions expressed here are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of the Marines Memorial Club. Admiral Rondeau, welcome back to the Marines Memorial Club. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Mike. Very, very good to be here with you, even virtually.
One of the first things you said when we were setting this interview up was, let's not just make it about women in leadership. Let's just make it leadership. And the first indication I got from you, you don't wear the gender card on your sleeve in this regard at all, do you?
No, Mike, and first of all, prior to my answering the question, I want to thank you for what you do for the Marines Memorial. I want to thank also Lieutenant General Mike Rocco for taking over the leadership of the memorial and his invitation to be able to do this interview. So thanks, Mike, to you, and thanks to the General. So no, I think that if you try to lead in one sector, you just miss the entire force. And so when we lead the force and not just parts of the force. And that's important, I think, for any leader.
What we're trying to do is impart some of the things that you've learned about leadership through your distinguished career. And let's go back to the beginning. Is there anything that was really, that inspired you to be a leader? Did you ever think of yourself, or have you always thought of yourself as a leader?
Well, sometimes I think that there are parts of our nature and our personality that is warmer to leadership in some ways than others. And there are all kinds of leaders. There's leaders of thinking, there's leaders of art, of music, of those kind of things. For me, the leadership of people has always been a natural. I've been comfortable and warm to it all my life, frankly, Mike. And so it came natural to join the military for that, where you have many people coming to common cause, common purpose, common mission, and coming together to do that. That kind of leadership is warm to me, and I've always been comfortable with it.
For your colleagues who grew up with you in the Hudson Valley area of New York, would they say, oh, Anne Rondeau, I remember her from way back as being the consummate leader? I mean, would we find that in your yearbook notes, or what? Would people identify you as a born leader?
Well, I think that what they would say is that I was very willing to take leadership positions when asked, and I would also take them when I saw a need that maybe I was not asked to do, but I saw a need and I would identify it and offer up my leadership skills, whatever those were, to a common mission. Again, we call it mission today. As a high schooler, as a college kid, it'd be common purpose, or doing the same thing, or going towards the same objective or goal. So I think that people would say, yeah, I was in student government, I was out there with the debate club, I was doing different things. The one thing that I actually wished I had been able to do, I was not able to do, was to be an athletic leader. I would have liked very much to have been parts of a sports team, but that was prior to Title IX. And I recognized actually in my own experience that that was something that I was missing. So when I joined the military, it was satisfying that kind of yearning to be able to compete and to excel and to contribute, not only with my brain and everything else, but also just being fit and ready to be able to answer a call any place that I could.
Just living, growing up downriver from West Point, which you said you visited on numerous occasions, why didn't you go Army?
Well, I'll tell you, West Point was part of my family experience. We went from concerts to the museum to the theater. I sang with the Corps of Cadets at the Messiah for a couple of years. It was a very warm place to me. But remember that ROTC and the academies were not open to me at the time. So I went to college, to a very fine private school, a private college, a liberal arts college up in the Finger Lakes area of New York. And then after that, thought about the military for various reasons. So at that point, my world had expanded. And I did look at the Air Force, I looked at the Army, but it was the Navy that actually I think was in my future for a couple of reasons. One, I attended the James V. Forrestal Elementary School. And if you know anything about James V. Forrestal, he was the Secretary of the Navy at one time, as well as SecDef. And his family was very much a part of our family, and so the Forrestal name was in our, they were friends of the family, and I knew his son was our insurance agent, and one of his daughters-in-law was at my English teacher. So the Forrestal name had a resonance. And then when I applied to the Navy, they were very welcoming, and I did well on the entrance test and did other things well. So the Navy became a natural as part of where I was at that time and not where I had been before.
Now, at that time, you mentioned that actually one of the first doors that was unexpectedly closed on you was closed on you not by some male bastion society, whatever, but nothing less than Vassar and the American Association of University Women. Tell me about that experience.
Well, that was in the old days of AAUW, and they are a different organization today, and I really admire how they've made that change. It's not easy for organizations to do that. At the time, the American Association of University Women, unbeknownst to me, was rather a closed group to certain kinds of colleges and universities. So at the end of my time, when I had gone back home after college, working with the fact that we were in an economy that was not hiring very easily, we were in a recession, I went home. I figured I would network and try to find ways to understand work prospects in networking. I had been accepted to grad school but could not afford that. So I wanted to find the kind of work that I was interested in doing. And I thought network was the best way to do that, absent the job opportunities. So I applied to AAUW, and they would not accept me because I had not gone to the right school. Now, within about a month of that, I applied to the Navy. And the Navy said, well, and when I asked the Navy, why should I join you? And the Navy said, from the first day that you walk on board your command as an ensign, you will be expected to be a leader. So welcome to being a leader. So I had the AAUW at that time saying no, and I had the Navy at that time saying yes. And so it was a great lesson for me about how to explore opportunities and understand what's in front of you. So one door was closed, another door was opened, and it was an interesting contrast to understand.
This being 1974, the Navy was not the most socially liberated organization or sector in American society. But did you find them open to change?
I think organizations, first of all, default to their self-interest, normal. You want to have people with you who are making the mission better, the job better, revenue more, whatever it might be. So the Navy was uncomfortable about women in its operational forces. It was uncomfortable in various ways, but certain leaders were not. And so I believe profoundly that leaders matter and leaders make a difference. So organizationally, the Navy was trying to figure out the structural pieces of this, law, policies, and those kind of things. But at the same time, I was allowed to join. And when I got to my first command, it was not easy, But I had one or two leaders who were willing to invest in me. So the single leaders who were in front of me, the intimacy of that immediate leader in front of me, allowed me to say, this is a place that I can work in and try to succeed in. Not everybody was welcoming, and there were barriers and there were prejudices and biases, but they were balanced in overall with a sense that some people saw a future and valued my abilities to contribute. And for some reason I was philosophical about that and understood that, and it just made me work harder, study more, and to really be diligent about delivering mission and proving my value, that when I was really there and focused and dedicated and applied my mind and my body to all these things, that the work would be valued. When I came in the Navy, women officers were not expected to wear flat shoes or slacks. It was not authorized for women officers to wear the flat shoes, leathers, or slacks of any kind. There was no authorized for women officers because they were not expected to do any work that required them to not wear heels and skirts. Within the first year and a half or so, that began to change because in that time frame, the end of the Vietnam era, the draft had stopped, and when the draft ended, the Navy and all the other services were looking at opportunities for people to come in.
But at the time, women weren't even allowed on ships, and you're looking at a naval career and you can't even get on a ship. What was your workaround for that?
Yeah, so for that time frame, the first thing I did was my first job was at the SINCPAC Fleet Staff, the Compact Fleet Staff they call it now, and my job was I was brought in as an ensign in a fleet lieutenant's job, much to the chagrin of my chain of command, but they were stuck with me. But I was thinking, what is it that they're missing? What is it that they feel as though they will miss from an ensign who had never been to sea, with a fleet lieutenant coming in and doing this job in fleet communications and cryptography? So I went to the waterfront and I made friends with guys on board those ships. And I spent weekends, I spent Saturdays on board ships with duty sections that were there to learn about the ships and about things of the sea, although we were always tied up. And I had the ability to translate that. I was reading a lot, did a lot of reading about the Navy in the Pacific and in Hawaii, and so I did a lot of reading. And so knowledge and interest and focus and all those things got it so that people were believing that maybe I had a future in the Navy. And so we did a lot of things like that. And then I thought, well, I would like to learn how to fly. So I went in, I dedicated my first year or two of salary to learning how to fly. Now back then, my annual salary was $7,700, or $7,700 in my first year in the Navy. And what I did is that I dedicated about a third of that to learning how to fly. So I wanted to learn how to fly, and I did that. And I applied for naval aviation, but it was closed to me, and I was turned down. Okay, but I knew how to fly. So now I have the language of knowing how to fly. I have the language of knowing about ships, and it's not a practical experience, but it is experience that I am acquiring in my own knowledge base. And people began to notice that. So I was advised to apply for the Air Intelligence Program for naval aviation for the VP community, and I did that. And I became the second woman Air Intelligence Officer in the history of the Navy for VP command.
What were some of the leadership lessons you learned from those initial challenges that probably still hold today, that are your kind of go-to steps when you're kind of analyzing the situation and what to do?
So I do believe that the ability to adapt to your environment so that you can lead it effectively. I think being competent, so adaptation or the ability to adapt. Competence, that you know what you're doing and that you have confidence of those who are senior and junior, that you know what you're doing. Authenticity, be who you are, and be good to that, and know your strengths and your weaknesses, and be good to that so that you are dependable. And then integrity, that people know that what you say is what you mean and what you mean is what you say. So integrity and trustworthiness, being trusted. If people will trust you with who they are and what they're doing, and that their energy is not going to be wasted by you, and that their efforts will be understood by you and made better by what the kinds of things that you can do to help them to be stronger. Trust is nearly non-negotiable, and those are the kind of things that I say that have made me, I think, successful. And I'll add to that, not taking yourself so seriously that you can't laugh and smile and have a light heart, because at some point leaders should not be enervating. They should not suck and sap energy from the people around them. They should give energy. They should give the ability to go the extra mile. And leaders need to infuse resilience and persistence. And once in a while, being able to laugh and lighten up is really important.
You talk about equity assessment, that you kind of look at the situation from the perspective of the other person. Is that how you first size up a situation, as how you're going to deal with it?
Yeah, there's a couple of things here. Remember, again, and this is where being, the minority comes in, because if you know that you are kind of the unicorn in an organization, you got to find out what are the people around you worried about. So I always go into any kind of a command, whether or not I'm leading from the front or I'm leading from the middle, whatever place I am doing my work. What is the environment that I'm in? What is the context? And what are the equities that people have in this environment? To understand the equities of the mission and the culture and the people. So equity assessment is something I do all the time. What are other people thinking about, worried about? And let me try to understand that first.
How difficult was it to transition those skills and that experience from the military to the civilian world, and especially in academia, which you went into next?
Remember that I was in principally jobs that were in support of warfighters. So I was in a support function. That group of people, and there's millions of them, and at least thousands, and there's lots of others if you think about the the concentric circles of support. But because I was in those kinds of mission sets, I had a lot of civilians around, I had joint forces around, I had transporters, logisticians, operators, warfighters, money, financial folks. So the diversity of the people that I had the privilege of either working with, alongside, or leading really helped me to make that transition to the civilian force probably easier than somebody who's been a hard-driving, operationally focused, ordnance on target, constant operator and warfighter. I probably had an easier transition. And then, of course, the Navy sent me to Georgetown for my master's, and then I had also been pursuing on my own my doctorate, and so I was around that kind of an environment. So all those things really helped me to have kind of a more complete notion about mission sets that were different than the military. But in the end, everybody wants to succeed. They want to trust, they want to believe, and they want to act. And those things are important no matter where you are.
But that far along in your career, having established such a success in the Navy, you said that most of the academic institutions turned you down initially, that they, almost on the face of it, didn't want a military person.
Well, so everybody has preconceived notions and biases and prejudices, and so it's interesting because I was able to take that in perspective and not look at it as a turn down, because remember, I came in as kind of this minority in the Navy in many ways. And I think that you need to think about that along the way. What are the prejudices around you? What is their context? You got to find, again, where you want to go. But when they say to you, it's really hard for you to make that transition. I hardly had the ability to explain, gosh, I've had the ability to adapt and to be in different environments my entire career, but their prejudice was I was linear, orders, and I was linear, and I was vertical, and I did not understand horizontal. And I would smile because in our Navy we do have vertical to establish order, clarity, and all that. But we're pretty horizontal when it comes to warfighting because we have combined arms, we have the coordinated warfare, we have all kinds of things that make us a very horizontal organization operationally in many ways. You can't explain that to a higher education panel that is talking to you and is doing their search for you. So you got to be able to think about, where do I belong? So it was interesting to me that all the schools' search committees that were the most serious about me as a prospective candidate were ones that were in crisis, because they saw some need for clarity and order. That I could talk about really easily. And I ended up at a school that had fired its president, lots of trauma, a gem of a school, a fantastic place.
I have to tell you, when I heard we were getting a vice admiral as our new boss, I was not really excited.
Now, this being Dupage Community College in Chicago, the largest one in the area.
Yeah, the College of Dupage, one of the largest single campus community colleges in the country, actually, and the largest in the Midwest, and not counting a couple of schools in Ohio, but in terms of a single campus, fabulous place, thoroughly a gem, and as are most of the community colleges in America. They are just gems for the country. But yeah, and so it's kind of a matrix of how you look at these things. And it's not linear, and it's not single point to point. It's about trying to help people to understand that you get them, whoever that might be.
But you jump into this crisis situation at Dupage Community College. Was there ever a time when you felt, well, I better dial back a little bit on how I'm going to handle this situation, because it's not the military. These are all volunteers here. And did you have...
So I actually have a story for that, Mike. So I get into the College of Dupage. I'm 21 miles due west, northwest of Chicago. And at the time, we'd gone through the country, gone through a series of active shooters on campuses and other places. So I get to College of Dupage, open campus, no walls. The security was, of course, we had campus police, but you know, you could get into any building at any time. So I thought, okay, if I were a military commander now, one of the first questions I'd be asking is, where are we on our lines of defense for active shooters? Where are we on those kind of things? Because I had command of bases. I had been a regional commander in the Navy. I had been a base commander both overseas and in the United States, so I understood this. So I went into that language, went into that kind of work, and I thought that they were going to say, oh, there's 3-star Admiral, she's making us do these things. We had enthusiastic responses to the point that I said, let's go virtual at first, let's do some online training, let's try that. Tremendous response. They said, okay, let's step it up a notch, let's do some role playing and some active drills. 100%, every class was full.
You know, no doubt, Admiral, these are very challenging times for everyone in this country, and that's why we decided to do this leadership series. And I often ask people, do you think there is kind of a void or a lack of good leadership in all sectors of our society today that's made it even more difficult to get through these challenging times?
So by DNA, I'm an optimist. So I will say to you, there are challenging times today for being a leader. Some of the environment has changed. The conditions have changed. So environmentals, remember, you got to know your context. So environments have changed, conditions have changed. The speed, density, volume of information for decision making has changed. The demand for being right immediately has changed. So a lot of the aspects of leadership have changed in terms of those tactical, operational conditions. What has not changed about leadership is the importance of having a vision, of being able to articulate and communicate that vision, and being trusted, and the integrity, so that people can, that trust of the leader is really important, because in the end, leaders require others to give up something of themselves to follow what you say is where you're going. And that means they've got to give up something. So what are they willing to do that? And so I think the conditions around leadership have changed right now, but the characteristic, the nature of leadership is the same, because you're asking people to do something other than themselves and above themselves. And that requires, again, trust, competence, confidence, authenticity, again, trust, integrity. Those are the things that they're still going to rely upon, no matter the speed, the warp speed, the decision-making skills. I do think that what undermines leaders is their tone. So leaders set tone, leaders set culture. So what I would say that leaders need to do today is understand the fracturing due to the information age and how people have access to stuff. Understand that, and understand that our requirement is to set tone and culture. And if you choose leadership tone that is completely divisive and is not constructively provocative, constructively critical, and is going towards a solution that works, then we have some issues.
Are you surprised that the country, the government in particular, is leaning on the military, probably more than it ever has, for leadership in the civilian world?
That the military is respected, because in the end, our compensation is fair and good, but our real compensation is in the sense of duty and service, and it is genuine. It's a genuine thing. And we call each other on it if it's not. The peer sanction, if you're going alone, is pretty intense in our military. And so you're always there mindful that you have somebody in front of you who is going to go the extra mile. They're going to take the next hill. They're going to stay the extra hours, going to do something for you because you asked them to do it. That is a profound commitment. That is a covenant. We understand who we are. We understand what's been asked of us. So don't make us victims, but don't also make us more heroic than we are. We are people who have families and do all those things, but we understand that there's a part of us that is expected to give other than ourselves, and that is recognized in the country. And in this democratic country, where a military that is the greatest in the history of mankind, and I'm a history major, so I can say that with confidence and competence, that it is also an extraordinary military of great ethos and of an ethic that is remarkable and that people recognize. And our accountability makes us even more credible, that people know that if we identify a wrong, we're going to try and make it right. And that is a precious, it's a precious treasure that this country should expect of us and that we should deliver.
I had a chance doing some background on you, Admiral, to talk to one of your former commanding officers. And he said, I can sum up Admiral Rondeau in one word, or a couple of words. She loves to serve. And just what you just said there, it seems like that is all that you're about, that you just love being in these situations. Now being at the Naval Postgraduate School and whatever, that you love to serve.
I appreciate the comment, because here at NPS, at Naval Postgraduate School, the service here is to young operators who are practitioner warfighters, practitioner warfighter enablers, who just want to be better and that they can say they're ready to fight and win even at a higher level. And my honor and my absolute privilege is to be able to help them to do that.
Do you think you're just you were born to lead, and that you have to be in some position where you can demonstrate that leadership capacity?
Well, I'm born to work. I'll tell you that. I mean, that sounds egotistical, but yeah, I guess so, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be doing this. So, you know, the facts and evidence are in front of us. That yeah, I guess I do, and that's been a part of my life. That has happened to me since I was a little kid. I don't mind doing this kind of thing.
And if I went further back into your background, back in Hudson Valley, New York, into your kindergarten class, would I find some of your classmates say, oh yeah, Anne Rondeau, she was the one who settled us all down. She was the leader.
Mike, you are now revealing our previous conversation about about that in kindergarten. Yeah, I even had the teachers. I was almost a TA in kindergarten, you know, and so I was considered a teacher's helper, because I would help other kids in the class as part of who I am.
Admiral Rondeau, thanks for helping us with our leadership series and keeping our membership connected with things that are so important here for the Marines Memorial Club and Association. And even though you're only down the road in Monterey, we can't wait to get you back up here again.
Well, Mike, I want to thank you again, and I want to again give a shout out to all of our Marines and all those who support our Marine Corps. It's a phenomenal service. These are men and women who are doing every day everything we've been talking about, and so it's a privilege and an honor to be part of your Marines Memorial Interview Series. I thank you. What you're doing in these series is really important. It's part of the narrative of our country and of our militaries.
All right. Well, have a great new year. And like I said, I hope we see you back up here sometime this year.
Great, Mike. Thank you.
For more information on Leading from the Front and how you can support it and the Marines Memorial Association with your tax-deductible contribution during this challenging time, go to ourmission.marinesmemorial.org/lead.